Welcome to this series of videos, this being the first one, where we'll be looking at several concepts in not only CSS style as we've done in Chapter 5, but also in the concept of tables when we're dealing with websites and web pages. This is an example of just a basic table right here that just says sell content in several places. A more specific one might be something like this one where we have perhaps a schedule for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you have various choices and components in here. You've got the border of the table, it's right along here. You've got the spacing between the cells. You've got what's called padding, which is the white space area, so to speak, where the words don't literally bump up against the margins necessarily. And of course you can align them left and right, vertically, top and bottom, etc. And we'll look at, even though this is not necessarily a part of the course, it's helpful to understand some of the source code behind the scenes, and I don't want that to scare those of you who are not feeling good about programming. Basically what I will do in this series of videos is to go through an illustration of how to do the tutorial 6 problem or exercise called the Flue Line Bus Company, and you can follow along in your book if you want to on page 261 to get this content. Now what I have on the screen right now has nothing to do directly with that problem, but I will go ahead and open up Expression Web and pause the video as you need to, or replay anything that gives you difficulty. And I already have the tutorial set up. If you look at the bottom of page 261, you'll notice that the folder involved has a series of files, and again I'll try to make this as illustrative as possible for you. We've got 6 pages called Crew Info, Rules, Seating, Terminals, and Tickets, and then we've got one called Flue Logo, which is a picture, which will end up being something that we put at the top of the page called the masthead. Let's go back into Expression Web right now, and of course remember the rules. We got to get away from the Microsoft Office mindset, so instead of choosing File New right here, we're going to go to Site and Open Site. And I'm specifically doing this if you must follow along with the page number. You can go to page 264. And those of you who are very much into the exact words type mentality, please understand that in textbooks sometimes files and folders may be in different locations on the computer from what the author of the book does, because the author of the book cannot possibly anticipate various learning styles, computer setups, and folders. You have to work that on your own, or ask a colleague in your class or myself as instructor. Mine happens to be on the desktop of my computer, and if I go to the desktop, I'm going to see where I personally have gone tutorial chapter 6, and I've got the folder called tutorial right there. It's looking for a folder, so I'm clicking open, and just make sure, most of you, or all of you certainly, when you get to this part of the course, you should be comfortable in having all this organized. And I'm going to go in and open the web page called info.html, or HTML if you please. An HTML file, of course, is the equivalent of a web page, part of a website, and of course there's nothing there except just bare text at this moment, and we'll make it a lot prettier. In order to begin this and to have a backup of the file, I'm going to go ahead, step 4 on page 264, where I'm going to do a file save as, and I'll save this page in the same folder. Make sure you're in the same folder, and it's going to be called info.new.html. That way, if I royally messed up or had to start over, I've got my original info intact. So I have info, which is the original file, and now info new, which is the one we'll be working on. Now, we can hide the panels if you want to, and we're going to do that. Lots of these panels that are over on the left and the right sides of the screen can be hidden. You can go to Panels, and there is an option toward the top that says Auto Hide All Panels, and that way we'll have nothing but the web page. If by chance you ever get into a panic mode, you can always go to the window option. I'm not seeing that right now. There should be something, well, it's in Panels actually in this case, and you can choose Reset. That will always take you back to the comfortable original appearance of Microsoft Web if you need it. So know these two options, Auto Hide and Reset. Alright, tables are very similar to what we have in Excel, and most of you probably in this course have used spreadsheets before, where you've got rows and columns, or grids, boxes if you please, and there's a lot of vocabulary associated with that on page 265. I'll let you read this individually as you need to. And of course, if you're in my classroom, when I do this in person, I can go over it with you face to face. If you go to the word table, what I'm going to do is go to the very end of the document. It's very important on page 265 to be sure that you follow the directions carefully. So in step 1 on page 265 it says to press Control End, which basically will take you to the very last line of the document. So you want to get past the part that says Flu Line Winter Specials and make sure that your insertion point's at the bottom. And we're going to go to the table menu. You could do this with one of the icons, but we'll follow the book. The very top option says Insert Table. Now you have a tremendous number of options here when you insert a table, because you have choices as to how many rows and columns. Columns being vertical, like the columns in a house. Rows going left to right horizontally. You can make the layout spread over the whole width of the page or part of it. You can make it float. You have this thing called cell padding and cell spacing and borders, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes visually. Let's just follow the directions in the book for right now. In the rows table, we're going to go 6 for 6 rows. And you can tab over, or you can use your mouse if you want to. We'll use 6 columns also. In the borders group, when we click on the size, we can choose these little arrows right here, and we want to choose, they're on a 6 thing here for some reason. We're going to do 6 for the size of the border, and then click OK. Now you don't get a preview with this, unlike what you do when you're dealing with other CSS styles. And we're not even dealing with CSS styles yet, we're just going directly with the page. So I now have a table, which may be hidden from you right now, and I'm not sure how well you can see this on my screen, but you've got some very thin lines. They're not as thick as you have in Excel, and those particular lines that separate all the different cell components from one another are called tracer lines. They're just, think of tracing something in a coloring book, you might think of it that way. They're just temporary borders. You can leave them that way, you can make them thicker or thinner for readability later on. And a code will be basically associated. Remember, as always, behind the scenes of a web page is a special code associated with this. Now I want you to see this now. Hopefully you can see this on this video. We have some items here. One of them is called, there's the name of the table right there. You'll see the word table, and I'm not sure if I can mark this with my, I can on this particular screen with my pencil. But it says table right here. That's the big table. And then you have something called TR, which is table row. Now, of course, there are 6 items in each row, and each item is surrounded by something called TD, or table data, or table data if you like that word. So here's a typical row right here with the end tag, TR, and the end tag, the little /TR. That's for the first row. And then you have another one for the second row, etc. So you've got table row, table data. You can even have a table header if you want to, and other specifics. And at the very end of all 6 of these rows, you'll see an end statement. I'm not sure if you can see this on this screen or not, but it will say /table, which means that's the end of the table. I'll go back to the design and let you see that. There are lots of properties you can set up with your table. If you click the table menu, not only can you insert the table, but you can also choose table properties. And if by chance this is grayed out, as is the case right now, I can click on the table, so I've selected it with my mouse, and then the option for table properties will show up. And you've got quite a few of these here. You can do this for a specific cell, for a caption for the table, or just for the overall table itself. Now I'm going to go ahead and explain how this works out as far as the concepts go right now by showing you this other illustration once again. In a table, and I may not show all this right now, but hopefully this will give those of you who are very visual learners, and I would be in this case as well, something about how it's set up. You've got the alignment of the table, whether or not the table is at the center of the page or whether you want it to line up to the left or to the right. You have that option. You can specify the content of the table, the actual content in each of these individual parts. I'll go ahead and show you this part right now. These individual parts, like this one and like this one, are referred to by the word cell, just like in a spreadsheet. The difference in a spreadsheet is that with your table cells, they literally are right up against each other, like so. And with a table on a web page, you can actually have space between them. You might want to think of these as being individual rooms like in a hotel, or my example, which sounds a bit cruel, is a mental asylum. That works for me very well, and I'll tell you why in just a second. There's something that we call spacing. The spacing between the cells can be set up. So right now, in this particular example, the spacing between the cells is right in here, how far apart the cells are from each other. Now, there's another concept that you have called padding, P-A-D-D-I-N-G. Now, again, the reason I use the mental asylum is we may want to protect certain patients from the walls, and so we may have some padding inside the walls to buffer the noise or to keep someone from hurting themselves. So you actually will have inside the cell itself, the padding would be this area that I'm coloring right in here, so that when you have your actual cell content, the words or the pictures, it will not necessarily have to bump up against the edge of the cell, so to speak. So you got the spacing and the padding. You've got borders that are there so you can tell how thick or what color the border happens to be. Here are the borders for each individual cell. The border in this example would be right in here. This is the border for each individual cell. And then you can have the overall border for the entire table, the table border itself. So you've got the border for each individual cell right here, and you've got the border for the entire table. So I just wanted to let you know all those parts. So it looks a little more complex than it actually is, and sometimes you have to play and experiment with it in order to see what's going to happen. So with the table selected on page 268, if you're looking at the beige boxes in your book, I'll go in with the table selected and I will choose table properties at the very bottom. And when I choose table by default, I think the Expression 3 book that you have has just table properties, and that's the selection. In Expression 4, I had to click the word table. And I have this dialog box that you see on page 269. And you can have various options checked. Now, the table property where it's got the number of rows and columns, 6 rows and 6 columns, is already in place. The padding is there as well, and you can modify this as you need to. For the table borders and the borders group on the bottom of page 269, I'm going to actually click the color arrow, and you can make up your own color, or you can click the one there that says olive, which is the 5th item in the first row. So there's olive. If I hover over it, it shows the word olive, and you'll get, of course, the hexadecimal code 808000 for it. And in the background, which is the color behind the scenes, I can go in and I'm choosing the color right there according to the book. You can either choose it or you can actually type the code, which is a pound symbol. It doesn't matter whether this is lower or uppercase letters. The computer understands either way. So 4 letter F's followed by 2 letter C's. These are actually hexadecimal numbers if you know a little bit about the math. So you'll see the preview that the interior color of each cell will be a yellow color. The border will be kind of an olive green color. I'll click OK right there, and you'll see the changes. It may not show up quite as well. Now when I click off it, it looked maybe green there, but when I clicked away from it with my mouse, it actually shows the yellow colors right there. And again, if I look at the code itself, it will give me in there, or at least it should, it will give me the background for what the color actually is. See if I can find that for you. Yeah, in fact, it actually made a style for it at the very top of the screen, where the auto style was, the border was 6 pixels solid and the background color is the yellow color. So there's a style right there that's been made with it. Alright, we can actually type data into the table, and I don't want to take a long time doing that with you. So what I'm going to do is start typing the data into the table for you, and basically what will happen here is you type in, and it's a little bit deceptive maybe in the book. I don't want you to misunderstand right here. In the very first cell, I'll type the phrase winter is special, and it looks like it's maybe unclear as to what they're wanting. And even though there are several other cells in there, notice what happened when I typed this first item, that the cell became very wide. You may again not be able to see this, but your other 5 cells in that row going horizontally across may get smaller. That's okay for right now. We'll change it. I'll type the word from right there. Go to the next cell and type the word to, and again, notice what's happening. The width of these individual cells will change as you type, so don't let that scare you if you're real nervous with computers. I'll go enough to get started on this, and again, I'm just typing the information that is on the bottom of page 270, and make sure your spelling is proper. You can do spell checks with these as well, and the computer will automatically allow space for these values as necessary. Now I won't type the rest of this while you're watching me. I'll actually go ahead and stop the video right here and let you see if this makes sense to you. So again, these videos will be a series of several short ones, which I hope will help you out individually. If you have any questions, please let me know.